Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chloe and on this channel we talk about all things books. Now in today's video I wanted to do a bit of an unhaul, just a spring clean of the shelves, try and get myself excited and motivated to read again. As I mentioned in my last video, I have been in a horrendous book slump for months now and I'm just trying to do everything I can to get myself excited for reading again. So I thought I would just cleanse the shelves. It was very cathartic. I feel like I've got a fresh start and I'm ready to start the TBR challenge again. With that being said, I have already unhauled the books, but I just want to show you them. I didn't want to film myself doing it because I done it quite late last weekend and I just couldn't be bothered filming it, to be honest. Absolutely toasting today. It is finally the start of spring. Spring has sprung here in the UK, I hope. I'll probably say that and then in like an hour's time it'll start raining again, but here we are, we're moving on. Anyway, into the unhaul. Now I just want to put out a few sort of housekeeping disclaimery bits out there. First of all, most of these books are really old. I have read 99% of them, so they're all like old YA dystopian type books. I liked most of them. I just have no intention of ever reading them again and they're taking up a lot of room on my shelf. I'm not going to go into the synopsis of every book because it would just take far too long. And most of these, if anyone does want them, will be on Vinted. So I'll link that in the description below as well. Now, I have actually put them all up in Vinted just to get rid of them, and if nobody wants them, then I'll end up donating them. But a couple of them have sold already, so I will put them on the screen now so that you can see the other books that I have unhauled. There's quite a few of them actually, and I've still got tons left. So definitely cleared out a lot of space on the shelf. So without further ado, let's get into it because we are going to be here all day otherwise. So the first book I have then just needs no introduction. Everyone has heard of it. The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I loved it when I read it. It made me cry like every other person on the planet who read it. I liked the film. It was amazing. I love John Green's writing. I've read tons of his books, but I just don't see me ever reading it again. And it doesn't need to be on my shelf. It was good at the time, but I don't want to put myself through that trauma. Next up, we have The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. Now, this is a fun one if no one's heard of it because it focuses on not like the main character of a book. So you know how you have like the chosen one in a book? This focuses on everybody else that lives in that town that just has to deal with all of the shit that the chosen one gets up to and all of the repercussions of that. So I was looking forward to reading this because I thought it was quite an interesting concept, but it didn't hit as hard as I wanted it to. I've read again a couple of Patrick Ness books. I liked them. This is possibly my least favourite out of all of them, but it's still a good read. So I just don't see myself reading it again. And again, there's no point in it taking up room on the shelf. Although, just a side note, I do really like the cover. Like, I think it looks quite cool and I wanted to keep it just for display purposes, but space is precious on my shelves. I might actually show you them at the end just so you can see how ridiculously filled they still are. But anyway, then we have My Life Next Door by Huntley Fitzpatrick. Again, I loved this book when I read it, so much so that I actually was going to pick up the next one. It's got a companion book. I couldn't find it for ages and then I just lost interest. But it's like a summer romance, sort of boy meets girl next door, and yeah, it's a typical YA romance novel. I do enjoy it. I would recommend it. This is one of the ones that I'm actually sad to see go because I love how it looks on my shelf, but again, we need the space. And I'm going to stop saying that because that's the case for most of the books on this, that I like them and I love how they look on my shelf, but I don't have space for them. So we have to try and be a little bit ruthless about the ones that we keep. Next up, I've got a duology, and it is Not a Drop to Drink and In a Handful of Dust by Mindy McGuinness. These are a dystopian sort of end of the world type duology where water has become scarcity. It's really hard to find fresh, clean water, and people who do have it have to fight and defend their water source. This was like, I read this, or I read the first one years ago when it came out, and then went back to the second one in COVID times, and I think it just hit a bit too close to home, like having to be stuck in the house and there's like an epidemic going on. Like I can't remember if the water was like contaminated with like cholera or something, or whether it was just really hard to find. I don't know. But yeah, I think it just hit too close to home. There's an epidemic and this is a pandemic going on outside. It was too much. So I think we're just past the whole dystopian end of society, world is over era. It's not for me anymore. Next up, we have Fallen Into Place by Amy Zhang. Now, I remember thinking this was quite a strange one when I read it. It's about a girl who tries to commit suicide by driving her car off of a bridge, and it's told through the perspective, I think, of one of her classmates, who's detailing what her last day was like leading up to that incident. So definitely trigger warnings if you read this. It was okay. I think I gave it like 3 stars maybe back when I read it, but again, it's one of those like old YA books that has just been on my shelf forever now, and it's time to move on. Then we have The Jewel by Amy Ewing. Now, this is old school dystopian. I loved this book when I read it back in the day, but I couldn't get the next one in the series in hardcover. And because of that, I never bought it. And it's been years and years and years since I read it. And there's no way that I'm going back to reread this now. But it was like really, you know, when those sort of like Hunger Games, Divergent, that sort of like era of books were out, this was one of those. So I think if you enjoy that genre, absolutely pick this up, because I loved it. But yeah, it was very like, does anybody remember the Matched trilogy? It gives that sort of vibe as well. I'm actually kind of sad that I never got to finish this series. And now I'm having like serious regrets about letting it go, because also look how stunning this cover is. Is that not just gorgeous? No, I can't do it. I do need to get rid of it. I've got too many books. Next, we have Say What You Will by Cammie McGovern. This is a book about 2 people who have disabilities, who become friends, eventually start to fall for each other, and then just the course of their sort of relationship developing. I'm going to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of this book. One of the characters has cerebral palsy, and the other one, I think it's cerebral palsy, and the other one has OCD. And I felt like the way that the OCD was dealt with was a bit like, just get over it, you know? It's all in your head, you're fine. So that I found quite annoying. But also, it has one of my absolute most hated tropes ever in this book. And I just, as soon as I read it, I was like, ugh, instantly hated it. Which is a shame, because it otherwise would have been an okay book. And I feel like back then, so this is 2014 this came out, and I feel like back then disability rep wasn't as prevalent in books as it is becoming now. So it's a shame, because it had potential to be a really, really good read, but then they just ruined it. I won't say what the trope is, because spoilers if anybody does want to read it, but it was frustrating. Then we have If I Stay and Where She Went by Gail Forman. I really like these books. I loved them. I cried. Full big fat tears the whole time. And I was definitely in 2 minds as to whether to get rid of these books, because they're small. They don't really take up a lot of room realistically. But it's 2 books that I'm probably not going to read again, and I would only be keeping them for the sake of having them in a collection. And they are really good books, and I would love the thought of someone else being able to read them. So I thought, yeah, it's time for them to go. Although these are ones that I am definitely on the shelf about. on the shelf. I have been sitting here for way too long. But yeah, I'm not sure. For now, they're going. And I feel like it's been a week and I've had a week to process the fact that I'm getting rid of all of these books, but now that I'm going back through them again, I'm starting to regret my decisions. But I have to stay strong, I have to get rid, it's time for them to go. I'm not going to read them again, but I highly, highly recommend these two books if you haven't read them already. They are definite tearjerkers, so if you want a good cry, read these. So the next couple of books that I have then are all fairy loot. Are they fairy loot? We have two fairy loots and an Illumicrate. These are all paperbacks that were put in as like extra books in a book box sometimes, or at least they used to. Every now and then you would get an extra book. I'm going to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what they're about because it's been so long since I had them, but I remember reading the blurb at the time and just thinking that they weren't really for me, and I've never ever once thought to pick them up or check them out again, so I figured, well, there's no point in them being on the shelf. So we have The Coldest Touch by Isabel Sterling. Then we have An Arrow to the Moon by Emily X.R. Pan. And we have The Ivory Key by Akshaya Raman. I'm so sorry if I've butchered that name. I think The Ivory Key is the only one that I read and thought, ooh, that might be good. But I've never wanted to pick it up since, so I just thought, well, I'm probably not going to read it. There's no point in having it. Then we have my collection of most of my collection of Rainbow Rowell books. So we have Landline, which is an adult fiction, and then we have Eleanor and Park and Fangirl. So Fangirl I really liked. I enjoyed that. I then bought Carry On, which is a companion book to that, but I have not read it, so I've kept that one for now, although that's definitely going to have to be, I think, one of those self-destructing books where if I've not read it by this time next year, it just needs to go. But I did like Fangirl. Eleanor and Park, not so much. It was just a bit, it was okay. And then Landline, to be honest with you, I think I was just a bit young at the time when I read this, and it kind of went over my head a little bit because I found it quite boring. But I actually think that if I read it now, I might enjoy it a bit more. Maybe. I don't know. It's about a woman who she's supposed to go with her husband and kids to visit his family for the holidays or something, but she doesn't, and she stays with her parents instead without them, I think. And then she finds an old landline in her closet, and when she picks it up, she realizes that she can speak to her husband, but his past version from when they first met, and they sort of like, they talk and kind of talk through their relationship and rekindle their love, or so, it was something like that. It's honestly been years since I read this, and I think that, like I said, if I'd read it as an adult, I maybe would have enjoyed it a bit more, but when I read it at the time as a kid, I was just like, what is going on? This is boring. That being said, I've got no intention of rereading it like every single book on this list, so it needs to go. I'm keeping Carry On for now. I'm still holding out hope that I might pick it up, but honestly, like I said, if I haven't by this time next year, it's out the door. We're having to be ruthless, cutthroat. It is a dog-eat-dog world out there for these books. If they're just not doing it, they're out. Ugh. Right. Oh my goodness, I am sweating. Sitting in this window with the sun coming right in, I am so hot. I'm not going to complain because it's taken a long time to get some nice weather, but jeez, it is. And I've got the window open, but there's no air coming in. So the next book I have really grappled with. I didn't know whether to get rid or keep. And I'll tell you why. I actually didn't enjoy it when I read it. It was such a drag. It was a bit, and I think that's quite controversial because a lot of people that I know who have read it loved it and really enjoyed the series, but it just honestly wasn't for me. And that is The Diviners by Libba Bray. And the reason that I'm so indecisive about whether to get rid of it is because look at the cover. It's one of the original covers before they all got changed and just went to shit. And it took me so long back in the day to find this cover in hardback, and I got it pretty soon after it came out, but it was difficult to get my hands on. And I just love it. It looks gorgeous. I mean, look at it. But I hated the story and I was so disappointed. So I had to put on my big girl pants and I had to say, no, it can't stay. It has to go. And I'm really sad about it. And I am dying inside a little bit by even now having to give it up. But it's time. It needs to go. I can't have books on my shelf that I didn't enjoy. If I'm getting rid of ones that I did enjoy, then I just can't justify keeping the ones that I didn't. Speaking of books that I didn't enjoy, this is another one. The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. This took me forever to read. It just dragged. I didn't enjoy the story at all, and I thought I would. It was a 5-star prediction, and I was so sad when I didn't like it. But this almost put me into a reading slump. It took me that long to get through it. So, nope. It has to go. This seems, for this stack, this is a bit of a theme because the next one is also a huge disappointment and was another 4/5-star prediction, and it is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. I don't even know what happened in this book. I still couldn't tell you. I was so confused the whole time. It was like The Last of Us on acid, and that's saying something because The Last of Us is just weird as well. Like that, I think that tells you all that you need to know. It was about a haunted house, but the house wasn't haunted. It was like it had a mind of its own, and it was, oh god, there was a lot going on. I'm still confused. I'm still not entirely sure what it was about. The characters annoyed me. And it's a shame because, again, it's another stunning book and it's one that everybody who I've asked about it seems to love, but it just didn't hit for me. The next couple of books I did like, but have read them a really long time ago. So I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. Loved this book. It's about twins who are really close but then sort of start to grow apart as they get older and then start having to sort of deal with that. And it's told through each of their perspectives but at different stages in their life. So the younger years follow one twin, and then as they get older it switches over to the POV of the second twin and sort of describes why and they sort of drew apart and don't really speak anymore. And it's a gorgeous story. I really liked it and I would highly recommend. It's another one that I'm just like, I love this cover and it looks gorgeous on my shelves, but I won't reread it, so it's a shame. And I've had this one for years. This was one of like the first booktube books that I picked up back in the day. I think it might have been Kat from Catty-tastic that his video that I saw that recommended this. Like, that's how long ago it was, back in the Booksplosion days. Then we have Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins. I liked this book. I thought it was quite funny, but I also didn't think that it needed to be a series. I feel like this sort of story could have just been wrapped up as a standalone. Rude. And I had no intention of reading the other two books, and I did hear from people that the other two books just sort of got progressively less exciting. So yeah, I had no motivation to continue with it, and I don't see the point in keeping one book in a series. So it has to go. Then last up for this little stack, we have More Than This by Patrick Ness, another Patrick Ness book that I got, but I actually ended up listening to this on Audible because it was free in the library at one point, which is a shame because look how cool that cover is. It's like a door. Obviously, it's not that cool, but I thought it was quite cool. And this one's another sort of strange one where it follows a boy who wakes up and his town is completely deserted. There's no one else there, and he thinks that he's dead because he was drowning at one point. That was his last memory before waking up, and he assumes that that's him now in the afterlife, and he's kind of having to figure out where he is, what's going on, what he's supposed to do, and it's very, it's very Matrixy. It's a bit like, what is going on? Okay, so I just had another parcel delivered, sorry, and now I've completely forgot what I was saying, but the postman has come to this door 3 different times today, so why not just deliver them all at the same time? That poor man has been up and down this street like a yo-yo today. And now I feel really bad because he must be like, he must be cursing my name with all of these parcels. But you would think he would just deliver them all at the same time. Anyway, never mind. So what was I saying? I think I was talking about this, wasn't I? More than this. Did I describe it? I don't know. Boy drowns, wakes up, possibly in the afterlife. Town's deserted, doesn't know what's going on. It was okay. I'm never going to read it again. It's getting unhauled. We're nearly at the end. Oh, that squeak. Nearly at the end though, I promise. So, I've got a couple of Dave's books that we're getting unhauled as well. So I'll quickly show you those in case anyone's interested. Not sure why you would be though, I'm joking. But we have Staying Power, which is Phil Taylor, the darts player's autobiography. I think it's autobiography. American Made, which is about Pablo Escobar's killer. And then we have Vegas Tales by Ricky Hatton, the boxer. So if anyone wants them, they'll be on Vinted. Then I also got rid of a couple of makeup books that I won't tell you about because they're you know, not that interesting. And then I have 4 more books here to go through. So we'll start off with one that I haven't read, and this is one of the few on the list that I specifically bought. In fact, it's the only one on this list that I've specifically went out of my way and bought rather than just getting given in a book box. And that is The Program by Suzanne Young. Now, this book is about, it's dystopian, and depression and mental illness has become an epidemic. And if you show any signs of depression or anxiety or any other mental illness, then you get put into the program. It's, I believe, a quartet, or maybe it's a series. I can't remember how many books there are. But I didn't pick this up for ages and ages after buying it. And then it hit COVID times and we were living through a real life pandemic. And I just wasn't interested in it anymore. And I don't think I'm ever going to be. So that one was unfortunately put into the Unhaul pile, and for a really long time I was determined to read it because it's the book that's been on my TBR for the longest, but at a certain point I just had to admit to myself that I'm never going to read it, so it needs to go. Then we have a book which, trigger warnings if you do ever decide to read it, but it's called Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock by Matthew Quick. This is a book about a boy who plans a school shooting because of various events that have led up to this. He's been bullied, he's been harassed quite a bit by various people at home and in school, and his mental health has just reached a breaking point. It was a good read, it was an interesting read, and it was certainly interesting to take a look into the mindset of someone who would do something like that, and how the events leading up to it had contributed to that decision. And again, it's just one of those books that you kind of read it once and then you don't need to read it again, so I'm not going to pick it up. And next up we actually have pretty recent buys for me. I have read them both. The first one, actually I read them both last summer. So the first one is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This is about a girl she's a ghostwriter for a really famous romance writer, and she's having a bit of writer's block trying to write the next novel. There's a helicopter going over my house right now, so I'm really sorry if you can hear that, but we'll just pretend it's not there. She's having some writer's block, and then she unfortunately gets the call that her father has died, and so she has to go home to arrange the funeral. Her family actually own the local funeral parlour, and it is revealed that her and her dad had the ability to see ghosts. And when she gets there, there's a knock at the door and of the funeral parlour, and she opens it to find the ghost of her editor standing in front of her. And then the whole story is about their relationship and them falling in love, and it's bizarre but cute and kind of quirky at the same time. It's an interesting concept. I enjoyed it. I actually read it, I think it might have been part of my 24-hour readathon that I read this, and I did enjoy it at the time. But again, it was one of those like okay 3-star books for me. So if you want it, it'll be on Vinted. Then we have The Roughest Draft by Emily Weberly and Austin Sigmund Broca. Did not enjoy this one as much as I thought I would. I was excited to read it because I love books about writing or authors or set in the publishing world. This is about 2 co-authors who had huge success writing novels together in the past, but then had a massive public falling out, and they haven't spoken to each other for years, but now they have to come back together to fulfill the final book in their contract. And it's about them trying to look past their past differences to do their work, but also trying to work through the things that led up to the big fallout in the first place. It was just a bit pretentious, to be totally honest. The main characters just came across as a bit up themselves for me, and the whole time I just wanted to tell them to just get the fuck over themselves and just get on with it. So yeah, it was a bit of an eye roll, and it's a shame because the concept of the story was really good, but I just found the main characters so annoying. They were just so irritating that it just ruined it for me, which is a shame. But this is another one where I've heard a lot of people who have read it and enjoyed it, so I was quite disappointed that I didn't like it, but is what it is. Anyway, we are done. We have finally finished the Unhaul. That is, apart from the makeup books that I'm getting rid of, every single book that I have unhauled from my TBR. I hope that wasn't too horrendously long and boring for you all. But there we are. I feel cleansed. It was cathartic to let them all go, and now I feel ready to start another year of reading in May. Do you want to see what my bookshelf looks like now? Let me show you. So after all of that unhauling, it's still full to the brim. Okay, can you see that? Can you see how many books are double stacked? I don't think you realise. Look at all of this. Like here, and all here. This is double stacked. There's books behind this and on top of there. Same with that row, there's books on top of them. This shelf here collapsed and is now sitting like at an angle. I just don't have any space. It's getting out of hand. It is ridiculous now. Anyway, I'm just rambling, so I'm gonna go. Actually, maybe read some of the books that I'm complaining about that I have too many of. So thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please like, subscribe, leave a comment, all of that good stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.